Okay, this is part 2 of the podcast that I'm calling Body Politic. Okay, sorry, I had to make this into 2 parts. Okay, so we left off with, we were starting to talk about the mind, and this also being a representation of the womb. So, sorry, I'm new at this and I say a lot. Okay, let me get my notes. So, I looked up the word invader, and in Arabic, it's related to the word gibberish. So, look, if this doesn't make sense to you and you're like, this is a bunch of nonsense, it's not logical, then you definitely don't have to listen to me from here on out or believe what I'm saying. But I just felt compelled to share my thoughts. So, invader means gibberish. So, when we think of the mind in a kind of a different way, often it's associated actually with masculinity. But I think that's more in terms of cognition, so there's multiple layers of meaning to all these concepts, and sometimes they seem to represent femininity, other times they represent masculinity, and so right now we're thinking of the mind and how it represents femininity, and how it kind of parallels with the womb, where, so the unvirtuous woman is this woman that lets in a lot of nonsense, just nonsensical or meaningless concepts and thoughts into her mind. This might sound crude, but if you think like the unvirtuous woman, she doesn't keep things closed, if you know what I mean. So it's the same way with, she doesn't keep her lower body closed exactly. And this is kind of paralleled by the mind not being kept closed to nonsensical or meaningless nonsense. And when you let in nonsense into your mind, you have a meaningless life. So this concept of like a life being meaningful means that you can't let in, entertain, host, welcome in, invite, and certainly you cannot chase after meaningless nonsense, either nonsensical thinking or nonsensical lifestyles and things like this, nonsensical relationships. So this virtue of the mind not just being this open cavity to any unworthy thought or unworthy man or seed. Okay, so I got a lost there. Okay. So basically, okay, I'm kind of jumping around, but this is the best I can do right now with this first podcast. I'm not very organized, but we'll just kind of go with the flow anyways, and we're going to jump to feminism. So basically just a way to get the body politic to destroy itself. Feminism is just a way to make the body politic full of meaningless nonsense. And with the last 4 years of these made-up pronouns and just these kind of nonsensical lifestyles we've seen people have, and also the sort of illogical medical experimentation has been going on that says you can actually change your gender. That, to me, in my opinion, that is an example of meaningless nonsense. And so when you engage in these kinds of thought process, accepting that changing your gender is meaningful somehow or important, or gives meaning to your life and to your relationships, that is not good. So that's to me, that's just goes hand in hand with the philosophy of feminism, which is to have this wide open mind, or body cavity, this promiscuity of the mind. And having it being promoted as beneficial, meaningful, important, have this nonsense, that have this, the concept of promiscuity and just having no discernment about what is meaningful and logical and versus what is meaningless nonsense or gibberish. So, I'm not sure if this next part will make a whole bunch of sense, but I'm gonna try it anyways. Okay, so 1 second. Okay. So just reading from my notes, which sometimes are more like a stream of consciousness rather than things that are perfectly coherent. So I'll just read from these kind of random notes. Okay, so feminism is a way to destroy one's emotional experience through entertaining or tolerating meaningless nonsense. One must sometimes have faith and be patient for the worthy inspiration to plant its seed in us, in our minds, and make us feel good again. Make us feel full of joy, full of love, full of contentment and peace again. This pregnancy, filling up and becoming full of these good feelings. And instead of pursuing meaningless nonsense or letting meaningless nonsense enter us for a false sense of fulfillment, or being pregnant with this fake and evil entity. So the worthy, meaningful man or thought seedling will come to us when we open our hearts and minds in the right way, and we become receptive to meaningful, logical thinking. So a man is supposed to also kind of represent this protection of the woman's womb or mind, this body cavity, from invasion by unworthy thoughts or men. It seems sometimes women are just cognitively less able to discern the right from the wrong, good from the bad seed. Men are the guard of their women, making sure bad or false meaningless seeds don't enter their women's minds. I think women just aren't always, without men, it seems women aren't the best at discerning right, good from bad thoughts, or nonsense from meaningful thoughts. I think this might be because the emotions are just more emotional, mentally emotional actually, and this clouds the mind, and I think our thoughts bring much more mental emotions than they do for men. And so these emotions are just not good at deciding if something is a good or bad seed, but the masculine logic or cognition is better at this, and it's the guard dog to the consciousness or mind, and also inevitably protects his woman's emotions, or the body, the nation, or an authentic culture that doesn't spawn more and more meaningless nonsense or gibberish. So you can see the correlation between the meaningless nonsense invading the womb or the mind, or therefore the woman, which could be represented by the country. So it's like when the population of a country, when too many of their minds, these people's minds, are being invaded by meaningless nonsense, this weakens the country from within and then makes it much more susceptible to invaders, which represent that infiltration of the mind. They represent that chaos. Honestly, if you think about a country being invaded, what comes to mind is imagery of sheer chaos. And actually, that's interesting because at the beginning I was saying how in Arabic, invader is related to gas and gas is related to gibberish. Well, gas is also related to chaos. And just so you understand what I'm saying, gas, I mean GAS, like you fill up your car with gas. And then, so there's another connection there between this gibberish and this resulting chaos. of a country or by Politic, or so I think I'm just trying to correlate this weakening of nations to this philosophy called feminism, and I think it's fooled a lot of people, and they think it's this really beneficial or benevolent, well-meaning, even strengthening social philosophy. But I think that's a very thin veneer or facade that it presents to people, and they've been fooled. They think that this is not just a veneer, but it's the whole thing is actually meaningful, logical, and just good. But I was trying to make the point here that the promiscuity, the physical intimacy outside of marriage that feminism promotes is actually very destructive to a nation, and it goes hand in hand, or it's like this vicious cycle that works with the invasion of the mind and also the invasion of the body by unworthy men. So only what I mean by unworthy men is just anybody that's not that woman's husband. And they feed off each other, this letting in the nonsensical, meaningless thoughts, and then also having this unvirtuous lifestyle with these unworthy men, and also letting in the unworthy thoughts into your mind. And so there's a lot I could go on and on and on about this kind of stuff, but I think I'll just stop here, and I will continue later, maybe about similar stuff, but just with another podcast. Okay. So if you like this at all, just give me a thumbs up, and if you like, several of my podcasts and want to hear more, you could consider just subscribing. But I just hope this maybe inspired some people, or just kind of triggered some mental exploration, or moved people in some way. I just try to be a little bit, kind of just provide an oppositional viewpoint to the mainstream view or current narrative. I just feel it's healthy to have that debate, and then we can just see, I think through just this kind of open debate, the best ideas will prevail. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will hope to have you guys listen in on some future podcasts. Right, bye.